Do star-crossed lovers really only exist in fiction? Can true devotion bloom amidst a hail of bullets and a life on the run? Does the thrill of rebellion ignite a deeper, more dangerous passion? For some, love wasn't just a feeling, it was a partner in crime, a shield, and sometimes the ultimate undoing. This September 25th, 2024, prepare to dive into the raw, often tragic, always captivating sagas of the most romanticized outlaws and the loves that define their legendary lawless lives. Number 6. Al Capone and May Coughlin Capone. The Roaring Twenties roared loudest in Chicago, a city bubbling with illicit alcohol, jazz, and the unchecked power of its crime boss, Al Capone. Yet behind the public facade of the brutal cigar-chumping gangster lay a man who by all accounts was deeply devoted to his wife, May Coughlin. Their love story, often overshadowed by the explosions and machine gun fire of Capone's criminal empire, offered a stark contrast to the violence he commanded. May was not a moll, a gangster's moll, or a partner in crime. In the traditional sense, she was a steadfast, loyal wife who maintained a quiet dignity through her husband's meteoric rise and eventual fall. Born Mary Josephine Coughlin in Brooklyn, New York in 1895, May grew up in an Irish Catholic family. Her path crossed with Al Capone, a young man from a similar Brooklyn background, in their teenage years. Alphonse Gabriel Capone, born in 1899, was 4 years May's junior. Despite the age difference and Al's already burgeoning reputation for street fighting and trouble, their connection was undeniable. The Capone family had moved to Brooklyn from Naples, Italy, a few years before Al's birth, settling in a tough working-class neighborhood. Al dropped out of school in the 6th grade. His temper and a violent altercation with a teacher marking an early departure from formal education. He gravitated towards the burgeoning street gangs, quickly earning a reputation for his fierce loyalty and even fiercer temper. By the time he met May, he was already associated with figures like Johnny Torrio, a pivotal mentor in his criminal trajectory. Their courtship was not one of glamorous dates or whispered sweet-nothings in dimly lit speakeasies. It was a grounded relationship between two young people from similar social strata, despite Al's increasing involvement in the underworld. May, by all accounts, was a quiet religious woman, deeply dedicated to her family. What drew her to Al, a man who even then carried an aura of danger, remains a subject of historical curiosity. Perhaps it was his charm, a quality he possessed in abundance when he chose to display it, or a sense of protection he offered. Some speculate she saw a softer side, a man capable of great tenderness beneath the tough exterior. This duality, the brutal gangster and the devoted family man, would become a central paradox of Al Capone's life. They married on December 30th, 1918, when May was 23 and Al was just 19. Timing of their marriage was significant. Their son, Albert Francis Sonny Capone, had been born earlier that month, on December 4th, 1918. This shotgun marriage, common in those times, did not diminish the strength of their bond. Al, despite his wild reputation, was reportedly thrilled to be a father. Sonny, born with congenital syphilis, likely contracted from Al, would face lifelong health challenges, a tragic shadow over their family life. May, however, nursed him devotedly, her maternal love unwavering. Soon after their marriage and Sonny's birth, the Capones moved from Brooklyn to Chicago. Johnny Torrio, Al's mentor, had called him to the burgeoning crime scene there, seeing potential in the young, ruthless gangster. This move marked a dramatic shift in their lives. Chicago in the 1920s was a hotbed of opportunity for those willing to bend or break the rules. Prohibition had created an insatiable demand for alcohol, and Capone, under Torrio's tutelage, quickly rose through the ranks of the criminal underworld. May, far from the violence and public glare, created a stable home life for Al and Sonny. She insulated their domestic sphere from the brutality of his business, providing a sanctuary of normalcy, while Al Capone's exploits filled the newspaper headlines: the Cicero turf wars, the St. Valentine's Day massacre, the relentless gang violence. May remained largely out of the spotlight. She was not seen at his lavish parties, nor was she involved in his criminal enterprises. Her days were centered on raising Sonny, managing their household, and maintaining a quiet existence. Accounts from the time suggest Al revered her and respected her wishes. He reportedly went home to her every night, even after the most brutal days. She was the anchor in his tumultuous existence, a steady presence in a world of shifting alliances and sudden death. Their home life was not without its struggles. May was a devout Catholic, and Al, though nominally Catholic, lived a life completely at odds with Christian principles. She reportedly worried about his soul and tried to steer him towards a more righteous path, though to little avail. The wealth he accumulated, however ill-gotten, provided her with comfort and security, allowing them to live in luxury far removed from the working-class Brooklyn they had known. Their primary residence during his reign was a large, unassuming house on South Prairie Avenue in Chicago. A stark contrast to the opulent public image Al sometimes cultivated. He also bought a large estate in Palm Island, Florida, a lavish retreat where he would spend winters with May and Sonny, far from the Chicago cold and the ever-present threat of rivals. Here, in the sun-drenched privacy, they could attempt to live a semblance of a normal, wealthy family life. May's loyalty to Al was unwavering. When he was arrested, she stood by him. When he was imprisoned, she visited him regularly, always presenting a picture of quiet strength and unwavering devotion. She never publicly condemned his actions, nor did she ever leave him. Her steadfastness was a testament to a deep, abiding love, a bond that transcended the notoriety and the brutality of his public persona. She was a woman of quiet dignity, a stark contrast to the sensationalism that surrounded her husband. Al, for his part, was deeply affectionate towards May. He called her darling and my sweet. Letters he wrote to her from Alcatraz, where he served a lengthy sentence for tax evasion, reveal a tender, vulnerable side rarely seen by the public. He worried about her, inquired about Sonny's health, and expressed profound loneliness and longing for their reunion. These letters, preserved by history, offer a glimpse into the private heart of a man feared by many yet clearly devoted to his wife and son. He would sign off with, "Your devoted husband, Al," a sentiment that seems incongruous with the ruthless gangster he was perceived to be. The myth of the gangster often portrays them as lone wolves or surrounded by a harem of fleeting relationships. Al Capone, however, broke that mold. His devotion to May, while not publicly flaunted in the same way his power was a quiet, undeniable cornerstone of his life. She represented normalcy, family, and a shred of decency in a life steeped in depravity. Her presence humanized him, at least in the eyes of those who knew them intimately. Their love was not a fiery, passionate whirlwind in the public eye, but a deep, enduring bond forged in the crucible of extraordinary circumstances. As Al's health deteriorated in prison, May's role became even more crucial. She advocated for him, fought for his medical care, and was there when he was eventually released, a shadow of his former self, ravaged by syphilis. She cared for him devotedly until his death in 1947, a testament to her enduring love and loyalty. May Capone lived a long life after Al's passing, remaining fiercely private and protective of her family's legacy. She never remarried, and her actions consistently demonstrated the depth of her commitment to her notorious husband. Their story, quiet and often untold, amidst the clamor of Prohibition-era violence, is a profound testament to a love that defied expectations, a love that offered a glimpse of humanity in the heart of a notorious outlaw. Number 5. Harry Longabaugh and Etta Place. The American West, a landscape painted with broad strokes of freedom and danger, served as the backdrop for some of history's most enduring and romanticized. Among them were the members of the Wild Bunch, a gang of train robbers and bank bandits led by the modic Butch Cassidy. But within this notorious group, another pair captured the imagination, not just for their daring escapades, but for their enigmatic and passionate love story. Harry Longabaugh, better known as the Sundance Kid, and his beautiful, mysterious companion. Their story is shrouded in legend, whispers, and the dusty remnants of historical records, making their romance all the more compelling. Etta Place's true identity, her background, and her ultimate fate remain largely unknown, adding to the mystique that surrounds her. What is known is that she was remarkably beautiful, intelligent, and possessed a quiet strength that allowed her to thrive in the rough and tumble world of outlaws. Some accounts suggest she may have been a schoolteacher or perhaps a prostitute before meeting Sundance. Regardless of her past, her appearance on the scene marked a significant turn in Sundance's life and the legend of the Wild Bunch. Harry Longabaugh, the Sundance Kid, was a captivating figure himself. Less voluble than his partner Butch Cassidy, Sundance was known for his calm demeanor, his exceptional skill with a gun, and his striking good looks. He was born in Pennsylvania in 1869, and by his early 20s he was already riding with outlaw gangs. He earned the nickname Sundance Kid after being imprisoned for horse theft in Sundance, Wyoming. He was a master of evasion, a skilled horseman, and a loyal friend, qualities that made him an ideal partner for Butch Cassidy. It is believed that Harry met Etta Place around 1899 or 1900, possibly in Texas or at a brothel in Fort Worth, a common haunt for outlaws seeking respite. She became his constant companion, not just a passing fancy. Unlike other women associated with outlaws, Etta was deeply embedded in their lives, traveling with the gang, waiting for them, and even participating in some of their less violent activities. She was the one who added a touch of grace and refinement to the rugged lives of the Wild Bunch. Their romance blossomed amidst a flurry of bank robberies and train holdups across the American West. While Butch Cassidy was the strategic mastermind, Sundance and Etta formed a unit inseparable and deeply devoted. The most famous photographic image of the Wild Bunch, taken in Fort Worth in 1901, captures Etta Place among the men. A striking figure, elegantly dressed, challenging the perception of a typical outlaw's consort. Her presence in that photograph cemented her place in history and fueled the romantic mystique surrounding her, as the Pinkerton Detective Agency intensified its pursuit of the Wild Bunch. The pressure on the gang grew immense. Butch Cassidy, ever the pragmatist, devised a daring plan. They would escape to South America, believing they could live freely there. It was a testament to Etta's unwavering loyalty and adventurous spirit that she agreed to join them. In February 1901, Harry and Etta, accompanied by Butch Cassidy, sailed from New York to Buenos Aires, Argentina. Their journey across the sea, a grand escape from the relentless pursuit of the law, added another layer of romance to their already legendary story. In Argentina, they attempted to build a new life, buying a ranch in Cholila, Patagonia. For a time, they lived a life that resembled normalcy, riding horses, raising cattle, and enjoying the vast untouched landscape. Etta, with her refined mannerisms and linguistic abilities, she reportedly spoke Spanish, helped them blend into the local community. They were seen as respectable ranchers, a stark contrast to their true identities as notorious American outlaws. During this period, their love story deepened, rooted in shared adventure and the promise of a peaceful existence, far from the reach of American law. The isolated beauty of Patagonia became the backdrop for their improbable domesticity. However, the peace was not to last. Pinkertons, relentless in their pursuit, eventually tracked them down. The pressure mounted, and the trio was forced back into a life of crime, robbing banks in Argentina, Bolivia, and Chile. Etta continued to ride with Harry, enduring the harsh conditions and the constant threat of capture. She was known for her composure under pressure, her ability to ride long distances, and her unwavering presence by Sundance's side. There came a point, however, when the danger became too great for Etta. In 1905, Harry and Etta returned to the United States, briefly seeking medical treatment for Etta, who may have been suffering from an appendicitis or some other illness. While in Denver, Colorado, Etta made a fateful decision. She realized that the life of a fugitive was not sustainable for her, and she could not continue. She bid farewell to Harry, a heartbreaking separation that marked the end of their shared journey. Harry returned to South America, rejoining Butch Cassidy, while Etta seemingly vanished from historical records. Her disappearance fueled endless speculation. Did she return to a quiet life, leaving her outlaw past behind? Did she live under an assumed name, perhaps finding a measure of peace? Or did she meet a more tragic end? No definitive records confirm her fate after she left Harry. This mystery only amplified her legendary status, making her a figure of quiet strength and enduring allure, a woman who chose her own path, even if it meant walking away from the man she loved to survive. Harry Longabaugh, the Sundance Kid, met his end alongside Butch Cassidy in Bolivia in 1908 in a shootout with local authorities, though even this event is debated by some historians. Their final stand together solidified their place in the pantheon of Wild West legends, but it is the memory of Etta Place, riding beside him, her enigmatic beauty and unwavering loyalty, that adds a profound romantic dimension to Sundance's story. Their love was a daring, adventurous bond, forged on the run, a testament to companionship and devotion. In the face of relentless pursuit, Etta Place remains one of the most intriguing and romanticized figures of the Wild West. Her brief, intense love affair with the Sundance Kid forever etched into the folklore of outlaws and their unforgettable loves. Their story speaks to the yearning for freedom, the allure of adventure, and the powerful, often tragic bonds that form in the crucible of a life lived outside the law. Number 4. John Dillinger and Billy Friquet. The Great Depression was a time of immense hardship, a stark landscape that oddly enough gave rise to a new kind of American hero, or anti-hero, depending on your perspective, the public enemy. And among these, John Dillinger, with his daring bank robberies, Maddox smile, and audacious escapes, became the most notorious. But even this public enemy, number 1, had a heart that beat for someone, a love story that was as fiery and tragic as his criminal career. His passionate connection with Evelyn Billy Friquet. Their love story, brief and intense, unfolded against a backdrop of economic despair and relentless pursuit by the newly empowered Federal Bureau of Investigation, led by J. Edgar Hoover. Billy, a beautiful woman with a fierce spirit, was not merely a passive bystander in Dillinger's life. She was a partner, a confidant, and ultimately a martyr for his freedom. Their romance captured the public imagination, embodying a rebellious spirit in a time when many felt cheated by the system. Evelyn Friquet, born in 1907 on the Menominee Indian Reservation in Wisconsin, was a striking woman of French and Native American heritage. She moved to Chicago in the early 1930s, seeking a better life than the one she left behind. Before meeting Dillinger, she had been married and divorced, and like many during the Depression, was scraping by, working odd jobs. Her life took a dramatic turn on a fateful night in November 1933. John Dillinger, born in 1903 in Indiana, was already a seasoned criminal by the time he met Billy. He had spent years in prison where he honed his skills and formed connections with other notorious bank robbers. Upon his release, in 1933, he wasted no time in embarking on a spectacular string of bank robberies that captivated the nation. He was audacious, charming, and seemed to defy capture, becoming a folk hero to many who felt sympathy for anyone who dared to challenge the established order. Dillinger and Friquet met at a Chicago nightclub, a chance encounter that quickly blossomed into an intense romance. Billy was instantly drawn to John's magnetic personality, his confidence, and his dangerous allure. John, in turn, was captivated by Billy's beauty, her spirit, and her unwavering loyalty. Their relationship was not just a fling. It was a deep, consuming passion that quickly bound them together. Billy became a constant presence in his life, traveling with him, sharing his hideouts, and living with the constant threat of discovery. Their life together was a whirlwind of stolen moments of tenderness, interspersed with high stakes, escapes, and the constant paranoia of a man on the run. They lived under assumed names, moving from city to city, always one step ahead of the law. They found solace in each other, a haven from the relentless pressure. John was reportedly very devoted to Billy, showering her with gifts and affection, treating her with a respect that many outlaw figures did not extend to their companions. Billy, for her part, reciprocated with fierce loyalty, standing by him even as his notoriety grew and the dragnet tightened. There were moments of public display of their affection, further fueling their romantic image. They were seen together in public, often at places like sports events or movies, blending into the crowd, daring to live a semblance of a normal life. This audacity, this defiance of the law, made them even more compelling to the public, who devoured newspaper reports of their exploit. Billy was often described as elegant and well-dressed, a stark contrast to the gritty life they led. She learned to carry a gun, though it is unclear if she ever used it in an active criminal capacity. Her role was primarily supportive, but her willingness to share such a dangerous existence was a powerful testament to her love. One of the most defining moments of their shared story occurred in March 1934 at the infamous Little Bohemia Lodge in Wisconsin. Dillinger and his gang, including Billy, were hiding out there when the FBI launched a surprise raid. The ensuing shootout was chaotic and brutal. During the chaos, Dillinger managed to escape, but Billy was captured. She was reportedly defiant, shouting at the agents who apprehended her, refusing to give them any information about John. Her loyalty under duress became legendary. Billy's capture sent shockwaves through the underworld and the public. She was subjected to intense questioning and severe treatment by the authorities, yet she steadfastly refused to betray Dillinger. Her unwavering silence, despite the threats and pressures, cemented her image as the ultimate loyal companion. She was charged with harboring a criminal and eventually sentenced to 2 years in federal prison. Her bravery in the face of adversity only intensified the public's fascination with their romantic, rebellious bond. Dillinger, heartbroken by Billy's capture, reportedly made several attempts to secure her release or break her out of prison, but these efforts were ultimately unsuccessful. Her imprisonment was a heavy blow to him, a constant reminder of the risks they both took. His actions following her capture, including a string of increasingly desperate robberies, suggested a man unmoored without his beloved. Their love story reached its tragic climax on July 22, 1934, when John Dillinger was ambushed and killed by FBI agents outside the Biograph Theater. Billy Frechette was still in prison when she heard the news of his death. It was a brutal end to a life lived on the edge and to a love story that had captivated a nation. After her release from prison, Billy Frechette struggled to rebuild her life. She tried to use her notoriety to her advantage, performing in a touring show called Crime Doesn't Pay, where she recounted her experiences with Dillinger. But the fame was fleeting, and the shadow of her past was long. She eventually returned to the Menominee Reservation, living a quieter life, and passed away in 1969. The story of John Dillinger and Billy Frechette endures because it speaks to a primal human desire for love and connection, even in the most dangerous of circumstances. Their romance was a defiant act against the bleakness of their times, a testament to a love that was passionate, reckless, and ultimately heartbreakingly loyal. They were not just an outlaw and his maul. They were two people who found solace and profound connection in a world that sought to destroy them. Their story forever etched into the romanticized annals of American crime. Number 3. Jesse James and Zerilda. Mims James. In the annals of American history, few names resonate with the same blend of infamy and romanticism as Jesse James. The archetypal outlaw of the Wild West, a daring bank and train robber, he was often portrayed as a Southern rebel, a Robin Hood figure, or a ruthless killer, depending on who was telling the tale. But behind the legend of the gunslinging bandit was a softer, more grounded side, one that belonged to his devoted wife, Zerelda. See? Mims, James, their love story, enduring and profoundly personal, was a quiet anchor in Jesse's tumultuous life. A testament to unwavering loyalty against a backdrop of violence and relentless pursuit. Zerelda, Mims, affectionately known as C, was Jesse's first cousin, a common occurrence in rural communities of the time. She was born in 1845, a year before Jesse, into a respectable farming family in Clay County, Missouri. Her background was conventional, a stark contrast to the outlaw life that would define her husband. Jesse Woodson James was born in 1847, also in Clay County, Missouri. His father was a Baptist minister, and his early life seemed destined for a path of respectability. However, the American Civil War irrevocably altered the trajectory of his family and consequently his own. During the Civil War, Missouri was a border state, brutally divided between Union and Confederate sympathies. Jesse's family harbored strong Confederate leanings. His stepfather was tortured by Union militiamen, and his mother, Zerelda Cole James, a formidable woman in her own right, was a staunch supporter of the Southern cause. These events deeply radicalized young Jesse and his elder brother Frank. By his mid-teens, Jesse joined various Confederate guerrilla groups, including the infamous Quantrill's Raiders, known for their brutal tactics. This experience forged him into a hardened fighter, accustomed to violence and living outside the law. After the war, with no real path to civilian life and a deep-seated resentment against the Union, Jesse, Frank, and other former guerrillas formed the core of what would become the James Younger Gang. They turned to bank and train robbery, quickly becoming the most feared and celebrated outlaws in the country. Their exploits, often sensationalized by the press, painted them as defiant figures fighting against perceived injustices, especially in the Reconstruction-era South. It was amidst this escalating notoriety that Jesse's relationship with Z deepened. They had known each other since childhood, growing up in the same community. Their bond was one of familiarity, trust, and shared roots. Despite Jesse's increasingly dangerous path, Z remained steadfast. She was reportedly a quiet, pious woman, but possessed an inner strength that allowed her to navigate the perilous realities of being married to America's most wanted man. Their courtship was clandestine, conducted in stolen moments between robberies and escapes. Jesse, who was notoriously wary of strangers, placed immense trust in Z. She provided him with a sense of normalcy, a connection to the quiet life he could no longer lead. She reportedly wrote him letters, sending them through intermediaries, and met him in secret locations. Her devotion was unwavering, a constant in his chaotic world. After years of secret meetings and a long engagement, Jesse and Z finally married on April 24, 1874. It was a quiet ceremony, attended only by close family. This was not a grand affair. Security and secrecy were paramount. By this point, Jesse was a living legend, with a price on his head, and agents of the Pinkerton Detective Agency constantly on his trail. Marriage, for them, meant even greater risk. Z understood the perils of being Jesse James's wife, but her love superseded her fear. Their marriage, despite the constant threat, was by all accounts a loving one. They had 2 children, Jesse Edwards James, born in 1875, and Mary Susan James, known as May, born in 1879. Z dedicated herself to raising their children, trying to provide them with a stable home life, even as they moved from one hiding place to another, constantly under assumed names. She tried to live as normal a life as possible, but the specter of Jesse's outlaw activities always loomed. Jesse, for his part, was reportedly a devoted husband and father when he was home. He sought respite and comfort in their domestic life, a stark contrast to the brutal nature of his public persona. He was known to bring home gifts for Z and the children, material comforts obtained through illicit means, but delivered with affection. He relied on Z for emotional support and companionship, trusting her implicitly. Their loyalty to each other was legendary among those who knew them. The pressure on the James family was immense. In 1875, the Pinkertons launched a raid on the James family farm, believing Jesse was there. In the ensuing chaos, a bomb was thrown into the house, killing Jesse's younger half-brother, and severely injuring his mother, Zerelda. This tragedy only hardened Jesse's resolve and fueled his resentment towards the law, further cementing his outlaw path. Z, by his side, endured these traumas, her commitment unwavering. Their life became a constant cycle of hiding, moving, and the gnawing fear of discovery. They lived under various aliases, often in rural areas, trying to maintain a low profile. Z, quiet and resilient, managed to create a semblance of a home, a sanctuary for Jesse from the dangers of the outside world. She knew of his activities, of course, but accounts suggest she did not participate in them. Her role was that of a supportive wife, holding their family together against incredible odds. The end came for Jesse James on April 3, 1882. He was living under the assumed name of Thomas Howard in St. Joseph, Missouri, with Z and their children. He had begun to trust the two brothers, Robert and Charles Ford, who were members of his gang and staying with them. Unbeknownst to Jesse, the Ford brothers had made a deal with the Missouri governor to collect the reward money for Jesse's capture, dead or alive. As Jesse stood on a chair to straighten a picture frame, Robert Ford shot him in the back of the head, killing him instantly. Z was present in the house when the fatal shot was fired. The brutal, unexpected death of her husband at the hands of those he trusted was a devastating blow. She handled the aftermath with a quiet strength that belied her grief, identifying his body and overseeing his burial. The image of the legendary outlaw shot in the back by a purported friend captured the public imagination and transformed Jesse James from a criminal into a martyr, a victim of betrayal. Z, Mims. James continued to live a private life after Jesse's death, devoted to raising their children and preserving the memory of her husband. Though often through a romanticized lens, she never remarried and passed away in 1901. Her unwavering loyalty and steadfast presence throughout Jesse's perilous life solidified her place as an integral part of his enduring legend. Their love story, one of quiet devotion amidst explosive violence, exemplifies the romantic ideal of a bond that endures against all odds, a love that defied the law and ultimately death itself, leaving a lasting imprint on the folklore of the Wild West. Number 2. Bonnie Parker and Clyde Barrow. They are perhaps the most iconic outlaw couple in American history, their names practically synonymous with a life of crime, danger, and a doomed, passionate romance. Bonnie Parker and Clyde Barrow burst onto the scene during the bleakest years of the Great Depression, capturing the public imagination with their audacious bank robberies, thrilling escapes, and a love story that defied convention and societal norms. Their legend, fueled by sensational newspaper headlines and a handful of evocative photographs, transcended their brutal reality, becoming a powerful symbol of rebellion and tragic love. Bonnie Elizabeth Parker was born in 1910 in Rowena, Texas. She was bright, ambitious, and dreamed of a life beyond the poverty of her surroundings. She was a good student, a poet, and longed for fame perhaps as an actress or singer. But life in the Dallas slums offered few opportunities. She married young at 16 to a fellow high school student named Roy Thornton, but the marriage was turbulent and short-lived, though they never divorced. By the time she met Clyde, she was working as a waitress, living a restless, unfulfilled existence. Clyde Chestnut Barrow, born in 1909 in Tellico, Texas, came from an even harsher background. He was one of 7 children in a desperately poor farming family, who eventually moved to West Dallas. Clyde, smaller in stature but tough, fell into a life of petty crime, early on starting with stealing cars and then progressing to armed robbery. He was maniac and resourceful, but also possessed a violent streak, and a deep-seated hatred for authority figures, especially the police and the prison system, which he blamed for his suffering. His early experiences with the law, including brutal treatment in prison, hardened him and set him on a path of relentless defiance. Their fateful meeting occurred in January 1930. At a friend's house in Dallas, Bonnie, then 19, was recovering from a broken ankle. Clyde, 20, dropped by to visit the same friend. Bonnie was captivated by Clyde's dangerous charm, his daring nature, and the promise of excitement he represented. Clyde, in turn, was drawn to Bonnie's intelligence, her fiery spirit, and her striking beauty. Their love was an explosive cocktail of passion and recklessness, a bond formed in the crucible of their shared desire for something more than the mundane. Their relationship quickly deepened, Bonnie disillusioned with her own life and intrigued by Clyde's lawless existence, became his constant companion. She wasn't just a girlfriend, she was an active participant in the Barrow Gang's exploits, driving getaway cars, carrying weapons, and even writing poems about their adventures, which were later published in newspapers, further cementing their romanticized imagery. The infamous photographs of Bonnie, cigar in mouth, holding a pistol, or posing playfully with Clyde, projected an image of daring, defiant partners in crime. A stark contrast to the traditional roles for women at the time. Their life on the run was a blur of bank robberies, gas station holdups, and a constant cat-and-mouse game with law enforcement across several states in the American Midwest and South. They moved from one stolen car to the next, from one hideout to another, never staying in one place for long. The gang, which included Clyde's brother Buck and his wife Blanche, along with various other members, was a motley crew. But Bonnie and Clyde were the undisputed heart of it. Despite the constant danger and violence, their love for each other was fiercely protective and deeply affectionate. They wrote letters to family expressing their devotion to each other. Clyde was reportedly very tender with Bonnie, especially after she was severely burned in a car accident, caring for her wounds and ensuring she had pain relief. He was protective of her, even while leading a life that constantly put her in harm's way. Bonnie, in turn, was fiercely loyal to Clyde, refusing to abandon him. Despite repeated opportunities to escape the life, she preferred to face danger with him than safety without him. Their story was sensationalized by newspapers, portraying them as either romantic rebels against a corrupt system or bloodthirsty killers. Public devoured every detail, creating a complex narrative that mixed fear with a strange sort of admiration. Their youth, their apparent fearlessness, and their unconventional love resonated with a population struggling under the weight of the Depression. They became the ultimate anti-establishment figures, riding fast cars, shooting back at the law, and living life on their own terms, no matter the cost. However, the reality of their lives was far from glamorous. It was a brutal existence of constant fear, poor hygiene, sleepless nights, and the ever-present threat of a violent end. They often slept in their car or in makeshift camps, rarely getting a good night's rest. Bonnie, especially after her accident, was in constant pain, limping badly. The romantic image was a stark contrast to the grim reality of their daily survival. The gang's methods were often messy, their take from robberies often meager, and their encounters with law enforcement were increasingly deadly. The authorities, particularly the FBI, were relentless in their pursuit. Frank Hamer, a legendary Texas Ranger, was brought out of retirement specifically to hunt them down. The noose tightened around the Barrow Gang. Every encounter with the law became more violent, every escape more desperate. Friends and family who aided them were arrested, and the gang itself dwindled. The end for Bonnie and Clyde came on May 23, 1934, on a quiet country road near Gippsland, Louisiana. They were driving a stolen Ford V8, believing they were on their way to meet a family member, when they drove directly into a trap set by Frank Hamer and his posse. Without warning, the officers opened fire with an array of weapons, riddling their car with bullets. Bonnie and Clyde were killed instantly, their bodies riddled with over 100 bullet wounds. Their deaths were as sensational as their lives. Crowds flocked to the small Louisiana town, eager to glimpse the bodies of the legendary outlaws. The public fascination with them continued long after their demise. They were buried separately according to their families' wishes, though it is said Bonnie expressed a desire to be buried next to Clyde. The story of Bonnie Parker and Clyde Barrow endures as a powerful, albeit tragic, tale of love and rebellion. They were young, reckless, and deeply in love, forging a bond that transcended the law and societal expectations. Their legacy is a complex tapestry of criminal acts and romanticized devotion, forever etched into the fabric of American folklore as the ultimate outlaw. Lovers, their names forever whispered in the same breath, a testament to a love that burned brightly, if destructively. Number 1. Ned Kelly and his family's enduring bonds. The wild, rugged bushlands of colonial Australia served as the unforgiving crucible for one of the most polarizing figures in the nation's history. Ned Kelly, a daring bushranger, armor-clad rebel, and a man who inspired both terror and fervent loyalty. Kelly's story is intrinsically linked to his family, particularly his mother, Ellen Kelly, and his younger sister, Kate Kelly. While not a conventional romantic pairing in the way Bonnie and Clyde were, the bonds within the Kelly family, especially the fierce loyalty and protective love shown by and for Ned, embody a profound and romanticized devotion that shaped his entire life and led to status. The love here is familial, raw, and foundational, providing the emotional core of Australia's most infamous outlaw. Edward Ned Kelly was born in December 1854 or 1855 in Beveridge, Victoria III, of 8 children to Irish convict parents. The Kelly family lived a hard life, constantly struggling against poverty, a hostile environment, and what they perceived as relentless harassment from the colonial police force, predominantly English and Protestant. Ned's childhood was steeped in a culture of injustice and class struggle which deeply influenced his worldview. His father, John Red Kelly, a former convict from Tipperary, Ireland, died when Ned was only 12, leaving his mother Ellen to raise a large family on her own. Ellen Kelly was a formidable woman, fiercely protective of her children and deeply ingrained in the Irish Catholic community of Northeast Victoria. She instilled in Ned a strong sense of family loyalty, a proud defiance against authority, and an unwavering belief in standing up for oneself against perceived oppression. This bond with his mother was paramount, shaping his understanding of justice and retaliation. Ned's early life saw him repeatedly clashing with the law, often for minor offenses, and he believed he was constantly targeted by the police due to his family name and Irish heritage. This systemic harassment became a key component of the Kelly mythos. Ned's younger sister, Kate Kelly, born around 1863, was known for her beauty, intelligence, and spirited nature. She was devoted to her older brother, a bond that would become crucial to the gang's survival and their public image. Kate often acted as a messenger, relaying information and supplies to the gang while they were on the run, deftly navigating the sympathies of their supporters and evading the police. She was a silent yet powerful force in the Kelly narrative, embodying the loyal sister bravely aiding her condemned brother. The turning point in Ned's life and the catalyst for the formation of the infamous Kelly gang came in 1878 with the Fitzpatrick incident. Police Constable Alexander Fitzpatrick visited the Kelly home allegedly to arrest Ned's brother Dan for horse stealing. What exactly happened is debated, but Fitzpatrick claimed he was shot in the wrist by Ned. The Kelly family vehemently denied this, claiming Fitzpatrick was drunk and acted improperly. Regardless, warrants were issued for Ned and Dan's arrest. Ned, convinced he would not receive a fair trial, fled into the bush with Dan and their friends Joe Byrne, and Steve Hart. The Kelly gang was born. This perceived injustice solidified Ned's position as a rebel, a man driven to violence only after being pushed too far. His subsequent actions, including the killing of 3 policemen at Stringybark Creek, while brutal, were framed by his supporters as acts of self-defense and retaliation against the state that had persecuted his family. The Outlaws became folk heroes to many impoverished Irish settlers in the region, seen as defiant champions against a corrupt system. Throughout their time on the run, the family connections remained paramount. Ellen Kelly was arrested and imprisoned on a charge of attempting to murder Fitzpatrick, a charge many believed was fabricated to force Ned to surrender. Her imprisonment, the plight of their mother, deeply affected Ned and the gang. It became a powerful rallying cry, cementing Ned's image as a son fighting for his mother's honor and freedom. This familial bond, this deeply ingrained loyalty, was presented as the very reason for his outlawry. Kate Kelly, living under constant surveillance, bravely visited her mother in prison and acted as a conduit for information to Ned. She faced harassment from the police, but her loyalty to her brother remained unwavering. She was often present at public events, a silent testament to the family's plight. Her quiet strength and defiance further romanticizing the Kelly narrative. Stories of her writing skills and her ability to outwit the police circulated, adding to the mystique of the entire Kelly family. The Kelly gang's final stand occurred at the Glenrowan Inn in June 1880. It was a desperate, dramatic shootout that saw the gang clad in their homemade armor engaging in a last fierce battle with the police. Ned, wearing his iconic armor, fought heroically despite being severely wounded. His armored figure, seemingly invulnerable, became a powerful symbol of his defiance. He was eventually captured, his bullet-riddled armor, a testament to his tenacity. Before his capture, and even during the siege, Ned tried to protect his family. He arranged for a train carrying police reinforcements to be derailed, hoping to avoid further bloodshed and perhaps use the chaos to escape. He also dictated his famous Geraldry letter, a long, passionate manifesto defending his actions, detailing the injustices inflicted upon his family, and portraying himself as a victim of police corruption and class prejudice. This letter, full of raw emotion and a strong sense of grievance, further cemented his image as a man fighting for his family and his community against a powerful, oppressive state. Ned Kelly was put on trial for murder, a trial widely seen as biased. Despite a huge public outcry and a petition with over 30,000 signatures appealing for clemency, Ned Kelly was sentenced to hang. His defiant final words, such as "life," spoken from the gallows in Melbourne on November 11, 1880, became etched into Australian folklore. He was only 25 years old. The legacy of Ned Kelly and the romanticization of his story is inextricably linked to the powerful bonds within his family. It was his love for his mother, his loyalty to his siblings, and his fierce desire to protect them from perceived injustice that drove him to become an outlaw. He was not just a criminal. He was a son and a brother fighting a system he believed was rigged against his people. His story became a foundational myth in Australia, a tale of the underdog fighting against overwhelming odds, a testament to the enduring power of family love, even in the darkest and most violent of circumstances. The Kelly family's story is a raw, emotional narrative of loyalty and defiance, a powerful example of how deep familial love can fuel a legend